And joining me to discuss it is senior fellow at the Gatestone Institute, Gordon Chang. Gordon, you have a new piece out today on this, and you say, quote, "It is from locations like this one where China will fire the first shot in the next war." What do you mean by that?
I think that if there's a war in Asia, and it looks increasingly probable, whether it's Taiwan, Japan, Philippines, or whatever, the first shot will not be the big fight in Asia. It will be weeks or months before, when China is spreading pathogens around the United States to weaken our ability to respond to what happens in Asia.
So in other words, this is sort of a bioweapon. And this is an indication, and apparently this facility was owned by a Chinese concern, this facility in Reedley, California, outside of Fresno. This would be an effort to weaken the United States, to soften up the United States, if you will, and divert its attention, as well as create a public health crisis, so the United States would not be able to respond forcefully militarily against China if, for example, they were to invade Taiwan?
Yes, I mean, that's exactly what I think is going on. And as Speaker McCarthy said, this is probably not the only location in the U.S. that had pathogens in an illegal covert facility. We've got to be concerned that China views a war as something that will be fought not just in Asia, but on American soil. So we have, for instance, Chinese coming across our southern border. Most of them are just desperate people who have given up on China, but among them are males of military age, traveling in packs of 5 and 15, pretending not to speak English, not accompanied by family members, and some of them are known to have links with the Chinese military. And we've got to be extremely concerned that these are saboteurs that will link up with the lab in Reedley, California, and other locations.
All right. So, and just yesterday, I mean, there's no question that China is trying to spy on the United States. I mean, that's a no-brainer. China is trying in many nefarious ways that we obviously don't even know about yet to infiltrate the United States. Just yesterday, 2 military personnel serving in the American military were found to be passing secrets on to the Chinese. But in terms of this kind of facility, this kind of potential bioweapon facility, what should be done about it at this point? What should the United States government be doing to make sure that there are no more of these scattered around the country?
I think that we have to be looking at Chinese-owned facilities around the U.S. Every Chinese national and every Chinese entity is under a compulsion to commit espionage or sabotage under the Communist Party's top-down system. Nobody can resist a demand from the party. And we know in China right now, the Communist Party not only tolerates, but sometimes encourages discussions of the use of diseases against other countries. So this is consistent with the narrative inside China itself, and it's extremely disturbing. Now, of course, we don't have proof at this stage, but we need to gather it because what happened in that lab and the contents of that lab are not consistent with any benign explanations.
Okay, inside your piece, there was a quote from the article that you wrote. I'm sorry, this was actually something that we heard last night on Leland Vitter's show, On Balance, about this development. Let's have a listen.
The fact is, we don't know much about these folks. We don't know if this is a company that is sponsored by China. I certainly suspect that it is. Our country was decimated by COVID-19 from a Wuhan lab, and this seems to be a Wuhan lab 2.0 in Reedley, California.
Okay, that's a council member for the city of Fresno. And what do you make of that connection, at least that rhetorical connection, between what we saw in Wuhan and the lab and the activities there and what's happening evidently in Reedley, California?
Well, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which is a BSL-4 facility, is very sophisticated. And what we saw in California is described as a kamikaze lab. It was poorly maintained. Obviously not very much in the way of scientific research was done there. But what is disturbing about the Reedley facility is it had all those different pathogens. And the explanations that the company that runs the lab, that they were developing pregnancy and COVID-19 tests, that's not supported when you look at the contents of that lab. The contents of that lab are consistent with a facility that would be used to launch biological weapons attacks, because as you mentioned, there were about 1,000 mice there that had been genetically engineered to carry disease. So this is really, really disturbing stuff.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.